My name is Scarlett Martinez. I'm 30 years old, and I've always been the one quietly holding my family together. The one people call when a problem needs fixing, a balance needs restoring, or a difficult truth has to be told. I'm not the loud, dramatic type. I'm careful, observant, and apparently weird. At least, that's what my younger sister seemed to think that evening. It was a Tuesday early evening. I was standing in my kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, when my phone rang. The screen flashed her name, Lydia, 28, my younger sister. Normally, I'd answer with a smile. This time, hesitation gripped me. "Hey, Scarlett," she said, her voice unnervingly cheerful. "So, about the wedding. You're not invited." I froze, knife in midair. My mouth went dry. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," she said, almost too casually. "Your parents are paying for half the wedding, but my fiancé thinks, well, he thinks you're kind of weird. And honestly, I agree. We just want people who fit our vibe. You don't. So, yeah, not invited." The words hung in the air like smoke, choking me. My sister, my own flesh and blood, was casually erasing me from one of the most important moments of her life. My parents were contributing $25,000, hard-earned, serious money, to a wedding that was now deliberately excluding me. "Lydia, but this isn't funny," I said, my voice trembling, but trying to keep calm. "You can't just—" "It's my wedding, Scarlett. My day. I get to choose. I've made my choice. Bye." Click. I stood there, silent, staring at the phone. The pasta I'd been stirring had burned slightly at the bottom. The knife in my hand felt heavy. The anger came next, sharp and bitter, followed quickly by a stab of hurt. Without thinking, I dialed my father. "Dad," I said as soon as he picked up, she just uninvited me from her wedding." There was a pause, then his voice low and measured. "She did what?" I explained everything. Dad didn't waste a second. "Stay on the line. I'm calling her. Mom, get in here." Three-way call. Lydia answered. "Hey, Dad. Did you just uninvite your sister from your wedding?" he asked calmly, though I could hear the tension threading his words. "Yes," she said, a little too defiantly. "But here's the thing. Either you accept it, or we'll go forward, and your contribution is at risk." My mother's voice cut in, sharp and unwavering. "Absolutely not. We are not paying for a wedding that excludes our daughter. Invite her properly, or we pull the money. You have until Friday." The line went dead. My sister called back immediately, 8 more times in the next hour, each call laced with frantic, angry words. "You ruined everything. This is my day. You're selfish. I hope you're happy." I didn't respond. I just let it ring. By that evening, the reality had sunk in. My family was at war over a wedding, and I was the uninvited casualty of my sister's obsession with perfection. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. This was not about me being weird. It was about her fear of anyone who didn't fit her narrow idea of acceptable. I had always been quiet, thoughtful, maybe a little different in ways she couldn't understand. Now she had weaponized that difference. I spent the night pacing, my mind running in circles, thinking about what boundaries I needed to set, and how my parents had just become warriors in my corner. Lydia's words still echoed. "Weird. You don't fit our vibe." I clenched my fists. They weren't just words. They were an attempt to erase me. By Thursday, the confrontation escalated. Dad and Mom had called her again, explaining firmly that she had 2 options: apologize and invite me properly, or lose the entire $25,000 contribution. She refused. She sent texts, each one more venomous than the last. "You told Dad you ruined everything. Hope you're proud. You selfish piece of garbage." I didn't respond. My resolve hardened. I wasn't going to beg for inclusion. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me with guilt. By Friday afternoon, she had called Dad once more, trying tears and pleas. Dad's response was steady, unwavering. "Invite her or fund the wedding yourself. Your choice." As I stood by the window, watching the sunlight fade, I realized something crucial. This wedding, this event, was never just about my sister. It was about control, about image, about who she believed had the right to exist in her carefully curated world, and I was not going to shrink to fit into her picture. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, notebook open, pen in hand. I wrote down every call, every text, every cruel word. I needed a record, not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. Truth needed a witness. By the time the city lights flickered on, I understood one thing. This was not a simple family quarrel. It was a battlefield of loyalties, boundaries, and identity, and I had no intention of losing myself just to appease her. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet determination took root. This was the start of something bigger, a reckoning, not just for her, but for all of us. And I was ready to stand my ground, no matter how chaotic it got. The next morning, my phone was already buzzing before I even finished my first cup of coffee. Messages from cousins, aunts, and even a few friends of the family. Some were confused, others outraged. It seemed the news of Lydia's exclusion of me had spread like wildfire. I felt a mixture of vindication and unease. Vindication, because the truth was finally visible to everyone. My parents hadn't been imagining things. Unease, because now, in addition to the conflict with Lydia, I had to navigate the delicate balance of extended family dynamics. Some people leaned toward her perfectionist streak. Others quietly admired my restraint. By noon, my mother had pulled me aside, her face pale but resolute. "Scarlett, you have to know," she said. "Lydia's messaging everyone. She's framing this as if we're ruining her dream wedding. She's calling us manipulative, claiming we're forcing her hand. You have to stay calm. Don't respond to the attacks." I nodded, my stomach tight. It was hard to stay calm when my sister's accusations were absurd and cruel, yet persistent. She painted me as the villain, the weird, disruptive sister who couldn't be allowed into her perfect world. I felt a pang of disbelief. That was her perception of me, not reality. The phone rang again. This time it was Cameron, Lydia's fiancé. I braced myself. His tone was calm, measured, almost polite. "Scarlett, your parents are being unfair. Maybe you should just let this go. It's really not that big a deal." I laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Cameron, you weren't at dinner last night. You didn't see the messages. You don't get what's happening. This isn't about me wanting to be dramatic. This is about being deliberately excluded because I don't fit your vibe." He paused. "Well, I still think she's overwhelmed. Maybe it's better if you just step back." Step back? I felt a flash of anger that burned hotter than anything before. This was collusion in subtle form, the quiet endorsement of exclusion. I realized how much Lydia had shaped everyone's perception of me, how carefully she controlled the narrative, and how much it hurt to watch her influence her fiancé and others. By the afternoon, the extended family began taking sides. Cousins whispered in hushed tones at brunch. My aunt phoned my mother, asking why we would undermine Lydia's happiness. My uncle, to his credit, called me directly. "Scarlett, you have every right to be upset," he said. "She crossed a line. Don't let them gaslight you." I felt a flicker of relief in that voice. Not everyone had been manipulated. Some still saw clearly. The emotional weight of the situation pressed down on me. I had always avoided confrontation, always tried to smooth over family tensions. But this was different. Lydia had weaponized my differences. She wanted to make me feel invisible, and yet I refused. Friday arrived, the deadline my parents had given Lydia. My phone vibrated constantly, 8 texts in quick succession. "You're ruining everything. My wedding is collapsing because of you, you selfish, controlling..." I didn't respond. I wasn't going to give her satisfaction. By evening, Dad called. "Scarlett, she still hasn't apologized. I don't know what else to do. Are you ready if we withdraw the contribution?" I took a deep breath. "Dad, we have to stand our ground. She's testing boundaries. She thinks she can bully us into compliance. We can't let her." That night, I sat alone in my apartment, replaying every memory of family dinners, holiday gatherings, and past arguments. I realized Lydia had a pattern. Whenever something didn't go her way, she manipulated, guilted, and excluded. And now she had crossed the ultimate line. She had attempted to erase me from a milestone in her life. I opened my notebook again and started writing. Every call, every text, every venomous word. I wrote with clarity and purpose. This wasn't just about memory. It was about truth. I had to document everything, in case this escalation spiraled further. By late night, I received one last text from Lydia. "You forced my hand. You'll regret this. I hope you're ready to be alone forever." I stared at the screen. The threat was clear, but it didn't frighten me. I felt a strange calm settle over me. I realized something essential. This wasn't a family argument. It was a test of integrity. My parents had already chosen their side, extended family mostly. And I was no longer willing to compromise my dignity for the sake of avoiding drama. The tension had reached its boiling point. I didn't know exactly what the wedding would look like or how many cracks would appear in Lydia's meticulously constructed facade, but I knew one thing: I was ready for the fallout. And somehow, deep inside, a quiet satisfaction grew. The first hint that Lydia's obsession with perfection and control might eventually backfire. By the time Saturday arrived, the tension had reached a fever pitch. Lydia had reluctantly sent me an invitation, though there was no apology attached, only curt wording: "You're invited. See you at 3 p.m." I read it twice, feeling neither relief nor satisfaction. It was empty, a gesture without accountability. The wedding day began with subtle chaos. Vendors called, explaining that deposits had been lost. The caterer threatened to pull out entirely. The photographer, who had agreed only last minute, showed up with an old phone instead of professional equipment. Even the DJ's playlist, a hastily thrown together Spotify mix, was missing half the songs. Lydia's carefully curated vision of a flawless day was unraveling. And though part of me wanted to feel vindicated, I couldn't deny the pang of sympathy. Weddings are supposed to be joyful, even for someone as manipulative as her. But the deeper I watched, the clearer it became. Her perfectionism had become her prison. Guests arrived, many whispering about the discrepancies. Cousins looked uneasy. Friends murmured questions about missing parents, absent bridesmaids, and incomplete arrangements. Every whisper, every raised eyebrow was another mirror reflecting the consequences of Lydia's actions. I watched from a quiet corner, taking it all in. My mother stayed near me, her arm occasionally brushing mine, a silent show of support. My father moved through the crowd, discreetly smoothing tensions where he could, but I knew he was also watching, silently proud that I had stood my ground. Then came the meltdown. Lydia stormed out of the reception hall, mascara running, her wedding dress slightly askew. Her voice rang across the parking lot. "You're dead to me, Scarlett. When Mom and Dad die, I'll take everything. You'll get nothing. Enjoy being alone forever." I stayed put. I didn't move. I didn't respond. My heart pounded, but I felt anchored. This was her chaos, not mine. When the neighbor tried to intervene, she barely acknowledged him and finally left in a huff, muttering curses under her breath. Inside, the groom, Cameron, was frantically trying to calm everyone. He offered explanations, excuses, even small gestures of reconciliation. But Lydia's rage had already poisoned the room. Guests whispered, some left early, and vendors silently packed up, unwilling to be part of the spectacle. The reception had become a social disaster. Social media didn't help. Within hours, Lydia had posted her version. Real family shows up when it matters. Fake family creates drama. Comments flew in. My mother's friends called, questioning her narrative. Cousins forwarded screenshots, some sympathetic, others critical. The truth was leaking faster than she could control it. Amid the chaos, I felt something unexpected, a sense of calm. Watching Lydia unravel, seeing the walls she had built around perfection crumble, I felt a quiet vindication, but also clarity. I wasn't weird. I wasn't the problem. I was the one who had stayed true to myself, who had refused to be erased. The reception continued in its half-broken state. Half the guests left early. The food was sparse. The drinks were limited to a cash bar. Her photographer's blurry images captured moments of anger, frustration, and exhaustion rather than joy. The carefully choreographed dream had turned into a cautionary tale of control, obsession, and hubris. Even Cameron looked exhausted, caught between his fiancé's fury and the glaring reality that the day was spiraling out of control. At one point, he sought me out privately, whispering, "Scarlett, I never realized. I didn't know. I see it now. I'm sorry." I nodded, offering only a quiet acknowledgement. There were no words that could undo the chaos, and no apology that could erase the patterns of manipulation I had witnessed for years. As night fell, Lydia returned briefly to grab the cake topper, only to storm off again. Guests exchanged uneasy glances. My mother whispered softly, "She'll come back eventually. But tonight, she's learning that perfection has a price." In the quiet aftermath, I sat alone, sipping water, reflecting on the storm. The chaos of the day had stripped everything down to its core: integrity versus obsession. I hadn't engineered this disaster. I hadn't caused it. I had merely stood firm, and in doing so, I had exposed the true nature of my sister's character. And somewhere inside, I felt a tentative relief. Not joy in her suffering, no, not that, but satisfaction that the truth had come out. That for once, my voice, my dignity, and my presence were acknowledged, if indirectly. The wedding was a disaster. Lydia's dream, her perfect day, had been compromised, but in its ruin lay clarity, exposure, and the beginning of accountability. As I left the venue, I knew this was not the end. The family fallout would continue, the social tension would ripple, and Lydia's insecurities would likely fester. But for the first time in a long while, I felt untouchable by her manipulations. I had stood my ground. I had preserved my integrity, and for now, that was enough. The days after the wedding were quiet, almost eerily so. Lydia retreated into a bubble of rage and victimhood, posting cryptic messages on social media and sending frantic texts to anyone who would respond. Meanwhile, life around her began to stabilize, but not before the ripple effects of her actions reached every corner of the family. My parents, unwavering in their support, had taken a bold step. The $25,000 they had been ready to contribute to the wedding was quietly redirected into a trust for me. It wasn't just money, it was recognition of integrity, perseverance, and the courage to stand firm. My mother told me gently one evening, "Scarlett, you didn't ask for this, but you've earned it. It's yours, your choice how to use it." I kept documenting everything. Texts, calls, social media posts, not out of spite, but to protect myself, to preserve a record of Lydia's behavior. Each note, each screenshot became a shield of truth in a family history increasingly defined by deception and manipulation. Then came an unexpected gesture from Cameron's side of the family. His mother, a calm, thoughtful woman in her early 60s, reached out to my parents. She wanted to understand the chaos from the beginning, to hear the truth behind the wedding collapse. Over coffee one afternoon, she listened quietly as I recounted everything, my voice steady despite the lingering tension. "I'm so sorry, Scarlett," she said finally, placing a gentle hand on mine. "Your sister's behavior was unacceptable. Your parents handled it correctly. You didn't deserve to be excluded. You've done nothing wrong." Her apology, though not demanded, struck a chord. It was validation that standing firm wasn't just right, it was necessary. She explained that Cameron had also recognized the unfairness of the situation. Though loyal to his fiancé, he admitted privately that I had been judged superficially, punished for simply being myself. Even Lydia's husband, despite being caught in a storm of his wife's obsession, attempted reconciliation in small, careful ways. He acknowledged my role in maintaining dignity throughout the ordeal, even as he tried to mediate between the chaos and the family. I didn't need to forgive him, or anyone else, but I could appreciate clarity when it appeared. Meanwhile, Lydia remained in denial. She continued to assert that everyone was overreacting, that I was the problem, that her perfect day had been ruined not by her own obsession, but by my mere existence. But the cracks in her narrative were visible to everyone else. The wedding disaster, the vendors, the empty seats, the absent guests. She had built her dream on exclusion, and it had crumbled spectacularly. By the following Sunday, the family convened for a quiet dinner. Just my parents, me, and a handful of relatives who had witnessed the aftermath. My father raised his glass, a gesture of clarity and subtle triumph. "To family," he said, voice steady. "Real family shows up, not for perfection, not for appearances, but for each other." And to Scarlett, who reminded us that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. I felt a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet sadness. Lydia's actions had caused pain, but they had also clarified the boundaries between integrity and obsession, love and control. Days later, Lydia sent a final, bitter message. "You win. Happy you destroyed my wedding, my marriage, my relationship with everyone. Hope it was worth it. Enjoy being alone forever, weirdo." I didn't respond, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free. I wasn't alone. I had parents who believed in fairness, a supportive extended family, and a moral compass that guided me through chaos. I had integrity intact, and in the wake of her destruction, I realized something profound. Sometimes, the victory doesn't come from fighting. It comes from refusing to compromise who you are. In the aftermath, I even began to explore new possibilities for my own life. The trust fund allowed me security I hadn't imagined. Small joys, quiet victories, and a renewed sense of self-worth emerged from the chaos Lydia had wrought. Life wasn't perfect. No, far from it. But it was real, it was mine, and it was worth protecting. And in that clarity, I finally understood. The storm had passed, but the lesson remained. Integrity, courage, and standing firm in the face of manipulation are rare treasures. Lydia may never see it, may never acknowledge it, but that didn't matter. I had won the truth, and in the world she tried to control, I had taken the only thing that really mattered, my own dignity. Weeks had passed since the wedding disaster, yet the echoes of that day still lingered in family conversations and social media whispers. Life, thankfully, was settling into a quieter rhythm. The chaos that had threatened to fracture our family had instead illuminated what truly mattered: honesty, integrity, and the courage to stand your ground. I found myself reflecting often on the lessons I'd learned, not about weddings or money or control, but about human nature and resilience. Lydia's obsession with perfection, her manipulations, and her relentless attempts to control perception had ultimately isolated her. Her threats, her anger, her attempts to erase me, they didn't break me. Instead, they clarified the boundaries I had to maintain to protect myself. The trust fund my parents had established was more than financial security. It was symbolic of recognition. They had acknowledged my steadfastness, my refusal to compromise my dignity, and my willingness to stand up in the face of manipulation. With that support, I began exploring new opportunities, investing in personal growth, reconnecting with old friends, and even tentatively opening myself to new experiences I had avoided for years because I feared confrontation or failure. Cameron's mother and I continued to have quiet conversations, grounding our interactions in honesty rather than obligation. She shared wisdom about patience, perspective, and forgiveness, not for Lydia's sake, but for the peace of everyone involved. Cameron himself, though still navigating the turbulence of his own marriage, expressed subtle gratitude for my restraint and moral clarity. Lydia, predictably, remained locked in her narrative of blame. She continued to insist that everyone was against her and that the disasters of her wedding were somehow my fault. But her words no longer carried weight. They were shadows, echoes of a storm I had weathered and survived. I saved every message, every social media post, every interaction, proof of her patterns of manipulation should they ever be needed. One evening, sitting on my balcony with a cup of tea, I realized the profound shift in my perspective. I no longer feared conflict, nor did I doubt my right to defend my integrity. Standing firm had been terrifying at first, but it had also been liberating. I could navigate family drama, social pressure, and manipulation, and emerge not broken, but stronger, wiser, and more grounded in who I was. I also noticed subtle changes in my parents. Their pride was quiet, but unmistakable. My mother would occasionally squeeze my hand, eyes glistening, silently acknowledging that I had upheld family values with grace and courage. My father's words were steadier now, his trust in my judgment absolute. Even within the extended family, attitudes began to shift. Conversations about Lydia's behavior replaced gossip about me. Cousins, aunts, and uncles, those who had initially been uncertain, now recognized the unfairness I had endured. They began to see the importance of standing up to manipulation, of valuing integrity over appearances. As for Lydia, she remained a cautionary figure. Her marriage, still fragile, and her social isolation became a quiet testament to the consequences of unchecked obsession and control. I didn't rejoice in her suffering. Rather, I understood it as the natural result of choices driven by fear, perfectionism, and the refusal to accept accountability. Ultimately, I felt a sense of closure, not because every grievance had been addressed, nor because every insult had been answered, but because I had retained my dignity, my voice, and my clarity of self. The trust fund, the apologies from Cameron's mother, the quiet support of my own parents, these were not rewards for winning a battle. They were affirmations that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, creates lasting value and peace. In those reflective moments, I wrote in my journal, "Sometimes victory isn't about forcing the world to recognize you. It's about standing firm, protecting your truth, and letting life reveal the consequences of others' choices. Lydia will never see this lesson. I do, And that is enough. I am not alone. I am not wrong, and I am free. The storm had passed, the chaos subsided, and the family, though forever changed, had emerged stronger. I realized that the real victory wasn't in winning a confrontation. It was in remaining true to yourself, no matter the cost. And in that, I had finally won.